Quick video on giving presentations. So for me, presentations have always been difficult because it's always been a matter of getting up and speaking in front of people, but I think it's very common and that's why I want to sort of talk about it. It's perfectly natural to experience anxiety, to be nervous, to have general symptoms of that, which would be shallow breathing, which is one where you have a shortness of breath and you can't talk and your voice starts to break. You might have cold sweats or just be sweating generally. You might be, your heart races, you can feel a pressure sort of to feel closed up and feel vulnerable, and you can sort of feel the need to sort of leave the room and go and hide somewhere or go and try and get your breath or try and recharge or recuperate. So for me, the best way to deal with these things is, and I've been successful at it surprisingly, because I'm fairly reserved as a person generally, so I wouldn't naturally come across as someone that would get up and speak publicly, but I've done public speaking quite a bit, and I've done stand-up comedy even, and in front of a sort of friendly crowd on a few occasions, and it's always a lot worse than you pictured it, is basically what I'm trying to say. So 3 tips that come to mind for me is, first is have control of your breathing, because everything that you're doing is coming from your breath, your diaphragm, your ability to keep control of that and keep it flowing, because that's what will cause your downfall if you don't. Second thing that comes to mind is to try and get buy-in early on, so crack a joke, to start telling a story, start sort of unwinding the yarn for the audience, if that makes sense. It sort of give them something to buy into and get their interest early on. So that could be by beginning a story about yourself. So say, I went to the shop and then this happened and you wouldn't believe what happened, but I'll tell you about that in a few slides time, something like that. Things like that tend to work well. Humour's good in a sense of getting people to sort of like you and buy into you as a character, and sort of just making people think, oh, okay, I want to listen to this guy, you know. So you can tell something like a joke that's completely unrelated to what you're going to talk about, but ideally in the context of what you're going to talk about, you try and make a humorous remark or something like that. If you can build that into your speech, it will make a big difference to how much attention people pay to you, to your presentations, what you have to say. Because the whole room can collectively focus in on something as well. If you all start laughing, and there's one source of the laughter, you're all looking towards that source and you're all hanging on the next word. As soon as you get a laugh out of them, you've won the room, and that's as simple as that, really. And you know, no one's gonna not like someone that makes them laugh, so it's a very big point to do that, I'd say. And it's something that I'm consciously tried to do when I give speeches, and when I get up and speak in front of people for any reason. I try and think of a way of just sort of breaking the ice a little bit. It's very important to do that, I think. Last thing that comes to mind, just the top 3 tips that immediately come to mind, just to keep this brief, is definitely one that I struggled with initially when I was quite young, but it's completely made it a non-issue essentially since I started doing this, is look towards the back of the room. I think my dad taught me to do it, actually. I think it was a tip that he gave me, so I'll credit him for that. It's some. I mean, I just had a thought. I just remembered what it was from, actually. I was doing a sort of nativity style play. I think I was about 8. I was a bit older than sort of nativity age, but it was something where I was doing I was a newsreader, and I was reading out the events of what was going on in the play. It was like a modern take on a sort of an old religious thing. I can't quite remember what it was, but naturally, I'm not a very loud person, and I never was, and certainly wasn't when I was a child. But he said, look towards the back of the room, see one of the teachers, see someone sat at the back, and talk to them. And what you find naturally is you start throwing your voice over at everyone else, and everyone else can hear you fine. It sounds simple, but a lot of people don't do it, and I'm surprised that they don't think, well, look, everyone needs to listen to me. And it can be a fear that, say I'm sitting here now, it feels really weird, I'm in a public place. It's difficult to sort of stand here and project your voice like beyond this phone instead of just talking to it and like pretending I'm having a phone conversation with someone. So it's very weird. I've had a few people walk past, and it's a very awkward situation. So even in the context where it's okay to, even in the context where you are the presenter, you are the speaker, and you've got the whole room's attention, it can still be very difficult to project your voice and to get that out, and especially if you're not controlling your breathing, which is where it all comes back to. So yeah, get control of that. Make sure it starts with the breathing. Try and use humour, storytelling, build that in early on, and try and weed that throughout. It's always great if I remember there's one presentation where he said something at the start and then he sort of came back to it at the very end, so we were all sort of hanging on to what the end of the story was throughout the presentation. So you listen to the boring facts, you get the sales pitch maybe, and then you get the sort of the end of the story. You think, oh, okay, right. And especially if it's personal and it's emotive, then that's much more likely to draw people in and actually have them listen. If you say, I didn't plan this out very well, but if you said, did you know that 2 + 2 is 5 or something like that, you might think, well, what do you mean? But I'll tell you about that later. You might think, well, what do you mean? It makes people curious, whereas you start talking about, did you know our product? Well, I don't really care about your product yet because I'm not sold on it yet. So it's about getting their attention and buying them into something that they will actually care about early on. If that makes sense. So that's the 3 things that come to mind for me. Hopefully maybe one of them that you haven't thought about before, so maybe that's helpful. It'd be good if you could tell me maybe a few tips as well, because I'm always looking and I could always improve, so be grateful for your help. Thanks everyone, cheers.